Hi, I'm Trudy, and I'm 15. Recently, I discovered that my parents have been watching me. They've seen everything that has happened in my room through a secret cam. At first, it freaked me out, but then, well, just listen. My relationship with my parents was always based on trust. For example, I was never afraid to tell them about my bad grades or that I'd misbehaved, because I knew that they wouldn't punish me. My mum loved to say this one phrase when something that I did went wrong. Mama always knows best. It was kind of enough for me to start feeling guilty and awkward, and it always made me want to say how sorry I was. But things changed when I turned 15. We went to a shopping mall together one day, and as I was staring at the windows, I fell a little bit behind my parents, and near one of the boutiques, a nice-looking guy was working as a promoter. He started giving me compliments, and, I don't know, I felt so excited that I had attracted his attention. It was the first time in my life that someone had wanted to get to know me. At some point my parents called over, but I still gave him my cell phone number, and that same night, he asked me out. According to the rules of my parents, I always had to be home, no later than 9 p.m. So Terry and I went to the movies, and then he decided to walk me home. Frankly, I was really nervous, because he wanted to hold my hand the whole time. By the way, this was also the first time that I experienced my first real kiss, and it was amazing. Well, we kind of lost track of time, a little bit, like any two kids who are in love. So, by the time I got home, it was already 9:30, and knowing that my mum and dad had always been pretty understanding, I was thinking that it wasn't really a big deal that I was a little bit late. But it turned out that it was. My parents were tense, and in spite of the fact that I very enthusiastically started talking about Terry, both my mum and dad looked at me absently. I doubted that they even heard a word, because they only silently stared at the TV screen. And then suddenly, Dad very roughly said that I was late, and that he was not happy with that, and that they weren't happy at all with that, and he blamed the young man. That's what he called Terry, for everything. That evening, I just went to bed, and even though their behaviour was strange to me, I didn't think too much more about it. But then strange things began happening. Every time he invited me somewhere and I told my mum and dad about it, at first they were okay with everything, but then suddenly something really urgent would happen that we needed to deal with. Let's say, for example, on Wednesday I had planned on staying after school and walking with him. Well, right on that same Wednesday, it would just so happen that we had to go visit my grandma because she didn't feel very well. Or I can remember another case when Terry and I wanted to go to a concert to see a local band, and we had agreed to meet each other near the concert hall. I was already about to leave the house when Dad got back from work with cake and flowers. It turned out that he and Mum were going to celebrate the anniversary of the day they first met. They insisted that I joined them, and once again I had to call Terry to apologise. But what was really strange is that they never celebrated that day before. Literally, stuff like that happened all the time. Then one evening, Terry called me and said that he really wanted to see me, and he had already arrived and was outside near my house. Of course, I was extremely happy and went to rush outside, but even before I had time to open the door, my dad blocked my way and said that I wasn't going anywhere. It turned out that he and Mum thought that Terry wasn't good enough for me. Honestly, I thought that this was a joke or something, and still tried to leave. But then Dad opened the door and yelled at Terry that he'd better disappear off his property or that he would call the police. For the first time in my life, my parents, who were always so kind and understanding, behaved this way with me. I tried to pull my cell phone out my pocket to call Terry, but my mum rushed up and immediately grabbed it from me, saying that it was for my own good. I didn't understand anything. Of course, I rushed to my room. I wanted to tell Terry at least through the window what had happened. But he was already gone, and he hasn't even tried to contact me since. The whole situation was outrageous. I got really furious, and I started throwing everything in my room. I threw a stack of books off the table, knocked over the chair, and threw a pillow somewhere toward the walk-in closet. It knocked down a few shoeboxes, and they also fell on the floor. The mess was everywhere, but I didn't care. Exhausted, I fell onto the bed and started looking around. I suddenly noticed something small, right from where those shoe boxes had fallen. It was a small video camera, which definitely shouldn't have been there. I was too exhausted to get up and actually inspect it, so I proceeded to just lie there, thinking everything over. I had almost fallen asleep when I suddenly got the ridiculous idea that my parents could have installed it to watch me. Then I had a strange dream that I was a spy, just like they show on TV series, and I was fighting against my parents, who were also spies, and who had tried to put me in jail. In the morning, Mum and Dad behaved as if nothing strange had happened the night before, so I decided to not fly off the handle. But that thought about the camera was sort of stuck in my mind, and at some point I decided to check whether I really was under the surveillance. You know, just out of curiosity, just for fun. I deliberately took a pack of cigarettes from my dad, and when I walked into my room, I pretended as if I was taking them out of my backpack and hiding them under my mattress. For me, it was just a game, but imagine my surprise when a couple of days after that, I noticed how Mum was sniffing my clothes when doing laundry. Of course, I didn't ask her directly about that camera, but that seemed to be too strange for a simple coincidence. I decided to do one more thing, just to be sure that I wasn't mistaken. I knew that my parents were totally against my tattoos, so I went to a beauty salon and got a temporary one on my back. In my room, I started posing for the camera and even pretended that I called one of my friends and told her that I had finally gotten a real tattoo, like I'd always wanted. And that same day, my mum came into my room and gave me a new shirt that she bought and insisted on me trying it on in front of her. I realised that she did this on purpose. She just wanted me to reveal my tattoo. When she saw those wings on my back, she was about to freak out, but I explained that in a week or two they'd be gone. Now, that was definitely too much. I made up my mind to teach her and Dad a lesson, and went to the most extreme measure. I decided to pretend that I was pregnant. Oh, you should have seen me. I was like a real actress. I played out a real drama in my room. When I first stared at the pregnancy test from the pharmacy, I tried to express bewilderment and devastation as intensely as I could. Just for a second, I imagined how my parents were watching me on the screen and how my mum probably nearly fainted when she found out I was supposedly pregnant. Oh, it was so hard to try to contain my laughter, so I threw myself on the bed and buried my face in the pillow. I was shaking with laughter, but for the camera, it definitely looked as if I was crying. Nothing happened during the next few days. Well, except for my parents were kind of gloomy and didn't talk much. But that sometimes happens with the adults, right? I kept trying to think of another plan for how to better reveal that camera in my room, or rather, how to make my mum or dad volunteer information about it. Well, apparently, I also looked very thoughtful, and one morning my mum asked what was the matter. But I couldn't find anything to say, except that I'd just had a headache, and she immediately gave me a pill for it. About an hour later, my mum and dad burst into my room. They were in a total rush, and they practically forced me to pack up and go with them on some super urgent business. While we were in the car, Mum was nervous and wouldn't stop asking how I felt. I didn't understand anything until Dad parked our car near the hospital. I refused to go inside without any explanation, and right then, Mum put her head on my shoulder and began to say how sorry she was that she had nearly killed her grandchild. There were plenty of people around, and everyone began staring at us, and I felt extremely embarrassed. So I told them that there were no grandchildren yet, and that I didn't even have a boyfriend. Mum's hysteria stopped as abruptly as it began, and Dad took us back into the car, and right there, the whole truth came out about the camera in my room, which, as it turned out, they installed many years ago to be able to keep me out of trouble, and I told them that I had accidentally discovered it, and about all my tricks which I had done afterward. But the most important thing is that the pill that Mum gave me was actually designed to cause a miscarriage. But as soon as I took it, she immediately regretted giving it to me, and they brought me to the hospital to do a gastric lavage. Everything sounded really absurd, and as soon as we consulted with the doctor, and he assured me that the pill wouldn't hurt me, we went back home. Of course, Everything that happened was pretty offensive, but I decided to hold no grudge against my mum and dad. At least, just like any other parents, they just wanted the best for their child. They took the camera out of my room, and in return, I promised to not keep any secrets from them, even though I didn't have any anyway.